Hey, this is Chris Franco. You are listening to Compound Money Quietly, the CMQ Investing Podcast. In this episode, we're going to be discussing compound interest. Compound interest, or compounding, is one of the most important concepts for you to understand and apply as an investor. Benjamin Franklin offers one of my favorite explanations. Money makes money, and the money makes money. Now, Warren Buffett is a living and breathing example of the transformative power compound interest can have on your net worth. In August of 2020, shortly after he turned 90 years old, the Wall Street Journal published an article titled Warren Buffett and the $300,000 Haircut. I'll tell you more about this haircut later in the episode, but the article makes a couple of important claims. The first is that Warren Buffett is an ultra-billionaire because he grasped the power of compounding at the age of 10. And the other claim is that, and I quote, "The sooner the rest of us fully understand it being compound interest, the better off we'll be." The goal of this episode is to help you fully understand the power of compounding and, most importantly, learn how you can make it work for you as an investor. It'll explain how anyone can become wealthy through the power of compounding. You'll also learn how you can use the mental model of compounding to be more successful in almost all areas of your life. Let's get to it. Albert Einstein called compound interest the most important mathematical discovery of all time. If you'd like to see the formula, we have a post on CMQ Investing titled The Mathematical Advantages of Doing Nothing. To understand the mathematics of compound interest in this format, it helps that we first start with the difference between simple interest and compound interest. If $10,000 makes 10% every year for 5 years, in simple interest, you make $1,000 each year for those 5 years. And this turns your $10,000 into $15,000 after that 5-year period is up. With compound interest, the interest you make in the first year is added to the $10,000 principal. So the following year, you're now multiplying $11,000 times 10%. In the third year, you're multiplying $12,100 times 10%, and on you go. At the end of that 5-year period, you'll have $16,105.10. Buffett compares the growth of compound interest to a snowball rolling down a big hill, getting bigger and bigger as it goes. The following comes from the 1999 Berkshire Hathaway annual shareholder meeting. Buffett says, quote, "The nature of compound interest is it behaves like a snowball of sticky snow, and the trick is to have a very long hill, which means either starting very young or living to be very old." Building wealth with compound interest depends on how much your money grows and how much time it has to grow. One of my favorite books, Seeking Wisdom, says it best, quote, "Time is the key to compound interest. Over short periods, compounding produces a little extra return. Over long periods, it has an enormous effect." To illustrate this, let's imagine you invested $10,000 into the Vanguard S&P 500 ETF 10 years ago. In the last 10 years, the average annualized return has been about 14%. So $10,000 that grows at 14% for 10 years becomes $37,000. $10,000 that grows at 14% for 40 years becomes $1.9 million. And $10,000 that grows at 14% for 80 years becomes $357 million. This might help you better understand the following Charlie Munger quote: "The big money is not in the buying or selling, but in the waiting." Understanding compound interest will change the way you think about money, or it should. In the previously mentioned Wall Street Journal article, the author Jason Zweig notes that in his 20s, Warren Buffett reportedly would refer to the prices of things like haircuts in terms of how much money that money would be worth if it had been invested and able to compound. Quote, "His friends and family regularly heard the young Mr. Buffett mutter things like, 'Do I really want to spend $300,000 for this haircut?' Or, 'I'm not sure I want to blow $500,000 that way,' when pondering whether to spend a few bucks. To him, a few dollars spent that day were hundreds of thousands of dollars foregone in the future because they couldn't compound." This should make you appreciate the value of frugality. There's no shame in saving a couple of bucks here and there because those small amounts can become big amounts through the power of compounding. Now, compounding is a big idea that explains how the world really works. And you think of some of the behaviors that are required to realize the full potential of compound interest. You have to delay gratification. You have to be patient. You have to be consistent. If you have these qualities, it's very difficult for you to not end up wealthy. The world rewards these qualities. It just makes sense. It makes sense instinctively. It's innate, I feel. It's like you taught that as a kid. Patience is a virtue. Keep at it. Don't give up. But the mathematics of compound interest help explain why these qualities are so important. Peter Kaufman, who wrote one of my favorite books of all time, Poor Charlie's Almanac, gave a talk in 2018 on the multidisciplinary approach to thinking. And this is the approach to thinking that Charlie Munger recommends. Just as a refresh, here's something Charlie has said about this approach to thinking. Quote, "It's kind of fun to sit there and outthink people who are way smarter than you because you've trained yourself to be more objective and more multidisciplinary. Furthermore, there's a lot of money in it, as I can testify from my own personal experience." Now, this is Peter Kaufman in a paraphrased version explaining how compound interest can help you be successful in almost all areas of your life and using the multidisciplinary approach to thinking to make that case. What's the most powerful force that we as human beings, both as individuals and groups, can potentially harness towards achieving our ends in life? I'm going to quote Albert Einstein again. He said, "The most powerful force in the universe is compound interest." But that's not all he said about compound interest. He not only said that it's the most powerful force in the universe, he said it's the greatest mathematical discovery of all time. He said it's the eighth wonder of the world. Now, what's a good working definition of compound interest? I say compound interest is dogged, incremental, constant progress over a very long time frame. The most powerful force that could be potentially harnessed is dogged, incremental, constant progress over a very long time frame. We go to bucket number 2, and just a side note, by bucket we can think of disciplines. We go to bucket number 2, 3.5 billion years of biology. What's the most powerful force in 3.5 billion years of biology? It's the machine of evolution. How does it work? Dogged, incremental, constant progress over a long time frame. This is the beauty of deriving things multidisciplinary. You can't be wrong. You see these things lined up. They're like 3 bars on a slot machine. Boy, do you hit the jackpot. What do you think we're going to find when we go to bucket number 3? 20,000 years of human experience on Earth. You want to win a gold medal in the Olympics. You want to learn a musical instrument. You want to learn a foreign language. You want to build Berkshire Hathaway. What's the formula? Dogged, incremental, constant progress over a very long time frame. Look how simple this is. This is above genius. It's absolutely above genius because you can understand it. This isn't somebody drawing all these formulas and things up here about, how numbers multiply and amplify over time. The problem that human beings have is we don't like to be constant. Think of each one of those terms. Dogged, incremental, constant progress over a very long time frame. Nobody wants to be constant. This is the human condition. In geometric terms, this is called variance strain. Whenever you interrupt the constant increase above a certain level of threshold, you lose compounding. You're no longer on the log curve. You fall back onto a linear curve, or God forbid, a step curve down. You have to be constant. How many people do you know that are constant at what they do? I know a couple. Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. Everybody wants to be rich like Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. I'm telling you how they got rich. They were constant. They were not intermittent. I want to give a special thank you to latticeworkinvesting.com and Richard Lewis, who typed up a transcript of this conversation, of this talk, I should say, that they published on their website. I'll include a link in the post for the podcast. But again, thank you to latticeworkinvesting.com. Now, speaking of Charlie Munger, that last paragraph about being constant, it made this quote of his make even more sense. The quote was, "The first rule of compounding is to never interrupt it unnecessarily." It's so important to remember that. Now, Charlie Munger also has said that compound interest is one of the most important mental models there is, and his life illustrates how understanding and applying the big idea of compounding can produce exponential growth in all areas of life. This quote comes from the 2007 Berkshire Hathaway annual shareholder meeting. Charlie says that when he was young, he read The Richest Man in Babylon, which, quote, taught the joys of underspending your income and investing the difference and how wonderfully it would work over time. And lo and behold, I did exactly what this little pamphlet suggested, and it worked. And the other idea I got, was mental compound interest. So I finally decided I was going to give the best hour of the day to improving my own mind, and then the world could buy the rest of the time. And that may have been a very selfish thing to do, but it worked. So what Charlie was referring to is when he was a lawyer, he realized, I'm giving out my time is, being billed by the hour. I should give myself an hour. And in doing that, he took time to learn new things and continue to build his mind and create mental compound interest. So by getting a little bit wiser every day and doing that constantly, you're benefiting from compounding in the same way as you are when you're investing constantly in, let's say, an index fund and doing that consistently over a long time frame. The model of compounding shows us how small, continuous improvements over long periods of time produce exceptional outcomes. It makes me think about the importance of cultivating the right habits. In Jordan Peterson's book, 12 Rules for Life, Jordan Peterson speaks on the transformative nature of compound interest as it relates to self-improvement. Quote, aim small. You set the following goal. By the end of the day, I want things in my life to be a tiny bit better than they were this morning. Then you do what you decided to do, even if you do it badly. And you do the same thing tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. And with each day, your baseline of comparison gets a little higher. And that's magic. That's compound interest. Do it for 3 years, and your life will be entirely different. So what are some actionable insights you can take with you about compound interest? And I'm thinking specifically those that you can apply as an investor.